Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am bringing you a book review of Unconquerable Sun by Kate Elliott. Just as a quick note, I purchased this copy and I read this copy. However, I was also sent a digital review copy of this book by Head of Zeus, which is the UK publisher, for review. That doesn't impact my opinion on the book whatsoever. Also, this is going to be a spoiler-free review. So Unconquerable Sun is the newest book from Kate Elliott, who is a very, very well-established sci-fi and fantasy author. And this book, I won't lie, initially caught my attention because it's a Kate Elliott book. I've only ever read one of her books before, The Black Wolves, but I loved it, and it's such a shame that I think that series was cancelled. So I've been wanting to read more of her stuff, but she did describe this as a gender-swapped Alexander the Great story set in space. And I was like, yes, I am here for that. So I had a lot of interest in this book. It is one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I have to say that it absolutely lived up to my expectations. I don't think it's a perfect book, but this is probably the most fun I've had reading in a really long time. I could not put this book down. You can tell by the fact that I have pasta stains on it. I couldn't even put it down to eat my lunch, and I just spilled pasta all over this book. I literally couldn't put it down. I had such a blast reading it, and I really, really enjoyed it. Unconquerable Sun is truly epic. It is a sprawling space opera. It covers huge, huge areas of space, different races, different cultures. It has multiple points of view, which I will talk about later. And it was like watching a sci-fi film in terms of kind of the feeling that it gave me, like the most fun kind of sprawling, epic sci-fi movie, and I think that's one of the reasons that I enjoyed it so much. It's not one of those sci-fi books that has a really, really tight focus. It's truly, like, as I say a million times, sprawling. The world building in this book is really fun. She does not hold your hand with this. I actually, in the first chapter, she's just like throwing out the names of space stations and races and, you know, essentially gossip TV channels and these character names and battles and spaceships. Now my head was spinning, but I found it really easy to kind of catch on. It is, you know, it's just gonna have some of those sort of terms and things like that she throws at you that you probably aren't gonna understand initially, or even throughout the entire book. There might be something that's mentioned once and then doesn't come back up again. But that's the kind of world building that I really, really love. It feels so incredibly realistic, and it was just great. There are a lot of influences for this book. I know nothing about the Alexander the Great kind of story and the legends that surround him, so I really can't tell you anything about the influences from that story on this book. I'm sorry if that's what you're here for. I just don't know. But I will say that there are a lot of really obvious Greek influences, ancient Greek influences. There's also a lot of East Asian influences in terms of kind of the architecture and the naming conventions and the cultures and things like that. But there's also a lot of really fun pop culture references, like modern pop culture references, that kind of sneak their way in a really, really natural way, and I really loved that. You really get the feeling that this is, you know, many, many hundreds, thousands maybe, of years in our future, and there are some of those old Earth influences that have stuck around in the culture, but it's not like I don't know, it's not like them blasting sabotage in the Star Trek films or anything like that. It feels incredibly natural. So I want to take a second to talk about the characters, because the characters are definitely what drives this story. The plot is huge and complicated, but ultimately what it comes down to is our princess, Sun, and she's kind of the Alexander the Great character, and she is someone who is constantly trying to prove to her mother, who is the Queen Marshal, that she is worthy of being the heir. She's the only heir, so her mother doesn't really have much of a choice. But the book opens with her having just won this great military victory, and her mother is still kind of shooting her down over it. And so a lot of this book is Sun trying to overcome a lot of the kind of conniving in the background, in the politics and kind of the complexities of the house. She's constantly being spied on. She's a bit paranoid, very, very slow to trust. And I found her to be a little bit cold, actually. She doesn't have some of the sort of vulnerabilities that really makes a character feel human, although she does have this relationship with one of her companions essentially kind of being not hostages from other major houses, but they're basically forced friends for the heir, and these relationships between companions are incredibly strong, but sexual relationships are very, very, very much not allowed. But she is having a relationship with this woman named Hetty, and it's kind of a huge secret, and that's her one vulnerability, but it still didn't feel quite enough to overcome her incredible coldness. And while she was a cool character and I really liked her, she was definitely not the most relatable character in the book. So the fact that there are multiple points of view in this book is probably the best thing that Kate Elliott could have done, because I think an entire like 550-page book just from Sun's perspective would not have been as much fun. The other major point of view character in this book is Persephone Lee. So the Lee household is one of the major core houses in this government. So they're basically probably like kind of, I'd rank them just under the royalty in terms of power and influence. Persephone Lee hates her entire family. She loved her sister, who died as kind of a war hero almost, and she has a twin brother who is one of the companions to Princess Sun. And she ran off. She tried to escape her family. She assumed a new identity, and she attended this military academy. Basically on graduation day, her family's like, hey, guess what? We knew where you were the entire time. Come back. And she's absolutely miserable. She really hates her family. She has such animosity towards them, and I loved her. She's amazing. She was my favorite character, and I think she's one of my like new favorite sort of sci-fi and fantasy characters ever. She does have that same kind of lack of trust that Princess Sun does, and she does have a lot of anxieties around her family constantly trying to control her life. She just wants her freedom. She wants to be an engineer, but she does have those kind of vulnerabilities, and she feels a little bit more human than Princess Sun did. And I just thought that she was a fantastic character. I love the relationships that she picks up with other characters throughout the book. She has a almost like a bodyguard type character who comes in, and she's this beautiful young woman, very, very talented, been trained to basically assume this role, and they get on like a house on fire. I really, really love their relationship. I loved her kind of antagonistic relationship with Princess Sun, and it's just, she's great. She's an amazing character. And there are a ton of other characters as well. There are some point of views that are just one-offs. There are some that will come back occasionally, and I think will probably come up more in later books, because I do believe this is the first in a series. There's a character, I think her name is Apama, who is a alien species, who is a sort of member of the empire that is opposed to Sun and her mother, and she was amazing. I loved getting that kind of point of view of the quote villains of the story, and they're just people. I thought that was really, really, really well done. There's a ton of other perspectives as well, and it really is one of the best uses of multiple points of view. I can't think of another book that utilizes, like, you know, 8 to 10 different points of view in such an incredibly good way. It's really, really tight, and it's just really, really well done. So I thought that was absolutely fantastic. I have mentioned this in other recent reviews. The one issue that I did kind of have with this book is the fact that the first half is basically all setup, 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 and then the last half is basically one extended action sequence. And while the actiony bits were really, really good, I loved the sort of movement of the characters and the discovery of, you know, different, you know, plots and backstabbing from the first half of the book and the kind of building of relationships. I thought that that was really, really cool, and you get some of that obviously in the second half of the book, but a lot of the second half is just action, 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 which is fun, but it almost felt like you couldn't have a second to breathe. So I think that would be my one major flaw with this book, but honestly, it was still an absolute delight to read. I gave Unconquerable Sun a 4 out of 5 stars, but a 5 out of 5 for just pure enjoyment. As I said, this was the most fun I've had reading this year. I absolutely adored it. I cannot wait for the next book to come out, and I am definitely going to dive into Kate Elliott's back catalog and read some more of her stuff, because the 2 books that I have read from her have been absolute smash hits. So that is it for my review of Unconquerable Sun. This is the American edition. The American edition is out now. It came out in July. However, if you want to wait for the British edition, which comes out from Head of Zeus, it comes out, I believe, on the 1st of October. I would love to know in the comments below if you have read Unconquerable Sun, what you thought of it, if you read other of Kate Elliott's books that you would like to recommend, if this book is in your TBR, or if it has now caught your interest. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.